Hello, so we are starting Unit 4, and the first thing we did was actually a Nearpod, so you do need to make sure you do that. So in Canvas, in the 4.1 notes at the top, there's a link. So if you were in class, then you're good to go. You did it in class, that's all fine. But if you were not in class, you can click on the link and do it on your own. So all of this is really just a wrap up to that Nearpod. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're asking me questions. I will show you just really quickly what that looks like, just so you have a reference for what you're looking at. So it's about lunch trays with a school logo on them. And basically it walks you through a story problem and how you're supposed to figure that out. And then we talked about our learning objective is, if you look right here, I can use inverse operations to solve multi-step equations. So then what you're going to want to do in this Nearpod is, okay, so that's how I do the story problem. How can I write that as an equation? And again, if you are not sure how to do that, please come talk to me and I can help you. And then the second section was about these sticky notes and putting them in order and writing the equation for that. And deciding, does it matter which order those sticky notes are in? And then at the very end, it's just a quiz. So how you get credit for doing this Nearpod is with that quiz. So make sure you do that. And then for the actual notes in the notes packet, here's just kind of wrapping up everything we learned from doing the Nearpod. We can use mathematical expressions to represent actions in a story context. Just like in a story, the order of events matters. In math, we use grouping symbols and order of operations to make sure that the order is correct. The order for applying inverse operations is the opposite, let's say backwards actually. The backwards order that we use in order of operations. So instead of GEMS or PEMDAS, we use SMEG or SADMEP. Okay, so when we're solving equation, like if we go through and we say, okay, we need to do 2 times 3 plus 1 minus 14 times 4. If we were doing order of operations, we would have to do our grouping symbols first. So very first, we would do the 3 plus 1. So that would be 2 times 4 minus 14 times 4. Then we can multiply. So 8 minus, oh goodness, I don't even know what that is. I think 56. And then you could do the subtraction. That's the order we would do that in. But when we're solving for a variable, we actually do it in the reverse order. Okay, so if you had 4x minus 5 equals 10, let's actually say 11. Okay, so first we would normally do multiplication before subtraction or addition, but we can't do that when we're undoing. You can't undo a knot by starting at the first step of tying the knot. You have to undo the last step first. We go backwards. So we add 5. So 4x equals 16. Now you can divide. You can divide that 4 away and x equals 4. Okay. The problem is if you try to divide by 4, then you also have to do a whole bunch of other complicated stuff that just doesn't work. Okay. So keep that in mind. When we're doing this, there are actually specific properties that we use to be able to justify that. So I think you guys know what the distributive property is in general. You guys know how to distribute, but I want to give you the formal definition of the distributive property. And what that means is that if you have a number outside of the parentheses and numbers inside of the parentheses, that equals, how you do it is you do this one times this one and this one times this one. So you would get a times b plus a times c. That is the formal way we write out the definition of how you distribute. We also have an addition property of equality, And what that says is that if A equals B, then A plus C equals B plus C. So what that's saying is if you have two numbers that start out equal, like A and B, then you can add something to both sides and it will still remain equal. Okay? The subtraction property says if A equals B, then A minus C equals B minus C. So it's the same idea here. If you subtract A by the same number and B by the same number, they are still going to be equal, okay, if they start out equal. The multiplication property says if A equals B, then A times C equals B times C. So again, that's saying if you have two things that are equal, you can multiply them by the same number and they will still be equal. The division property of equality says if A equals B, then A divided by C equals B divided by C. So same thing, if you have two numbers that start equal and you divide them by the same thing, they will remain equal. Okay? So that's just a formal way that we write out these different properties. Okay? So today I learned that to solve for a variable, I have to undo what has been done to it. I can do that by using the inverse order of operations. That means that. So here's your chance to write down, what did you learn from the Nearpod and from this? What did you learn? What was really important to you that you need to write down and remember? Okay, so that should do it for 4.1 notes. If you have any questions or need any help, please come see me, and I will see you all in class.